Welcome to Subramani. One question which is very regular is I have 1 crore. Is that enough for me to retire? This is a very commonly asked question, and the number obviously used to change. And now the latest figure I have is about 1 crore, and I actually have no clue as to how to answer that question. One person, if he had asked me in the year 2000, right, that is about 20 years ago, I have 25 lakhs, is that enough to retire, right? So I'm assuming that 25 lakhs would have become 50 lakhs, has become 1 crore. So today the question is 1 crore. Now the question is, what would have I said in the year 2000 for a person having 25 lakhs? The answer is yes, of course you couldn't retire, because your annual expenses are about 1 lakh. And you have 25 times your annual expenses, so perfectly all right, you can retire. Then I did an Excel sheet and I came to some very surprising and shocking kind of conclusion. So let me just give out the numbers, reading from a text. So you started in the year 2000 with 25 lakhs, you got 10% return, which means you got 2.5 lakhs. Your household expenses were 1 lakh, and so you saved 1 lakh 50. Looked very good in 2000. By the time it came to 2004, you had 31 lakhs 5,000 as your principal, which means what got consumed. I mean, you earned an X amount, you got consumed, and the balance got reinvested, and again at the same rate. So by the year 2005, you were earning 9%. So you were earning about 2,91,000 and you were spending 1,53,000. Still very comfortable, because you had an annual surplus of 1,38,000. Come to 2009, now your principal was 36 lakhs. It had grown from 25 lakhs to 36 lakhs because of the reinvestment which was happening. You were earning 8%, but you were spending about 3 lakhs. You were spending 2,93,000. Which meant you were really now you were earning 2,93,000, you were spending 2,17,000, which means your surplus was down to 76,000. Now 76,000 is very, very cutting to the bone. Then you come to 2013. You're earning 8%. Which means on your capital of 38 lakhs, you were earning 3,10,000, but you were spending 3,06,000, which means now there was no surplus. And by 2014, which just means in 14 years, your capital was exhausted. Now look at it this way: I have not taken tax into account, and I have taken 10% and 9% return on 25 lakhs, which is not a small sum in the year 2000, because it was 25 times your annual expenses, and that's a number we all flaunt and said 25 saal ka paisa hona chahiye, because you retire at 60 and you will die at 85, so your money. But we realized that in 14 years that money got wiped out. So maybe the answer is not in 25 years, maybe the answer is 35 years, right? So why? Because inflation in India is higher than in the US. So US rule is 30 times, Indian rule may not be 30 times. So please beware of that. That brings us to the question, do we really have to worry about inflation? Yes, of course you have to worry about inflation, because the inflation that I've assumed here is about 7%, which I think is just par, right? I mean, there is no way how we are having inflation less than that. Anybody who tells you that is not considering petrol expenses, is not considering lifestyle expenses, it's not considering your annual vacations, nothing. And then they're saying, oh, inflation is low because coarse grains are low, but you're not eating coarse grains, you're eating fine grains, you are eating branded grains, right? If you're not eating rice, you're eating a brand of rice, you're eating a Kohinoor rice or some particular brand, you're eating a particular brand of sugar. So sugar, and which is unbranded sugar, may be 40 rupees a kilo, but branded sugar could be 65 rupees a kilo. You may be consuming more good than sugar. So good is not there in the consumer price index. So be careful as to see what is your spending bucket. Write down your numbers. Only then you will know your inflation. So in the US, a guy withdrawing 4% makes sense because inflation used to be low in US, but no longer, right? US also is now seeing higher inflation, and the Americans are worse off because they do not have good interest bearing investment avenues like the way we have. Our PPF and RBI bonds and all those things are attractively priced at 7% plus. I'm sure next quarter interest rates will go down, but right now we have a 7% inflation and 7.15 yielding asset, which is not bad at all. If inflation gets higher and interest gets lower, and interest will get lower, Vivek Kaul has put out a nice piece on why interest will get lower, because everybody wants a lower interest rate. The only person who wants higher interest rates are old people. When I say old people, I mean those people living on interest income alone. They don't even have an equity portfolio. They don't have a house which is given on rent. They're just living on interest. Those are the people who are hurt, and they will be mauled, right? Look at the American interest rates. 1980 it was 18%. 2021 it's struggling to be at 1.8%. So you have to worry about inflation. 25 times annual expenses seems to be tested very badly. So in 2000 you had 25 lakhs, annual expenses was 1 lakh, but inflation. So inflation during retirement is something to worry about. Most calculators ignore inflation at retirement and say go to a bond portfolio. No, it makes no sense. In India, you need to have an extremely good quality equity portfolio along with your bond portfolio, at least to the extent it takes care of inflation. So if I had 25 lakhs in the year 2000, maybe 5 lakhs should have gone into equity and 20 lakhs should have gone into debt, so that in the year 2010, I'm able to pull out 10 lakhs from my equity portfolio and still leave a few lakhs in my equity portfolio and put this money into bonds. If I don't do this bucket theory of how to invest, 25 times is not enough. 25 times and just a pure debt portfolio is not enough. So today, if your annual expenses are say 5 lakhs, which is about 40,000 a month, about 5 lakhs, how much do you need is very clearly at least about 2 crores, right? Not 1.25 the way we would have calculated and said 25 times. It is not being time tested. So the question is, how big a deal is inflation? I think inflation is a big deal because we have learned to live with COVID. We have learned to live with less, but I think we will have supply side problems. We will have demand side problems. If there is not enough demand for certain products, those product prices will immediately fall, but afterwards it go up because the suppliers just shrink. Do you know how expensive it is to buy a black and white roll today, or even a color roll? Find a camera which will use a roll, because most of us have digital cameras. Find a roll and then get it processed. Just demand is not there, so there is absolutely no supply. So finding a supplier is difficult, and the price is huge, right? So similarly, when demand for a product vanishes, prices go down immediately, and after that prices climb and you can't even find a vendor. So yes, inflation is a big worry. Historically, India has had inflation impacting us at about 7-8%, and I have done this. I have seen people maintaining accounts since 1968, and they have been impacted at 8% regular inflation, without talking of fridge and TV and AC and things like that. There, the inflation may be lesser, but the services we use, the kind of people that work for us and all that, if you take that inflation into account, there is no way how it is going to be less than 8. It was less than 8%. 2000 to 2021, I'm assuming it was at 7%, and I'm finding that I am not able to sustain with just a 25%, 25 times the annual expenses. So yes, broad inflationary numbers. Look at CPI, CPI and WPI. This is what happens when you are tracking Bengal elections on one screen and you're talking to people in another screen. Well, those kind of numbers are worrisome. Worry about inflation, not too much, but yes, inflation will be there, and for older people it will definitely be more to worry about. So let me just talk about inflation for older people. So when I talk to people who have better record keeping than I do, I find that they write down all their expenses and they're very easily capable of calculating how much is the inflation impacting them. So they will know the exact inflation for milk, for vegetables, for services. For example, the milk vendor now wants to charge a little more for supplying it because he's got lockdowns and things to worry about. So he says, I can't come into your building, so I'll charge more. So the service for bringing milk to your house or groceries to your house and those things cost more. The cook costs more, much more than what you are willing to, you even thought in your mind how much you're going to pay. Transportation costs are not very high if you're traveling by Ola or Uber, but I realize that older people today, and when I'm saying older, I mean even people who are 75, 76, when they travel, they prefer getting a local guy, local taxi whom they know well, so that in case by mistake they leave their phone or a bag has to be carried up, it is easier to ask that guy than to ask the Ola or Uber guy. In these cases, you pay about 20% extra, and I think it's absolutely worthwhile. But I'm saying when you're worried about inflation, you write down all these things, you realize that expenses are going up. Inflation is something to worry about, but I would love it if you can calculate your own inflation. Don't go by what I am saying. I'm saying 7%, 8%, 6%, doesn't matter. What matters to you should be what is the inflation impacting you. It should also matter to you whether you're writing down and calculating on a regular basis. We have no clue how much inflation will be for old age expenses like diapers, nurses, etc. Nursing, I'm sure inflation will be much higher than 7-8% just because there is demand and there is huge demand, but supply is shrinking. Not enough people will want to come into that area, especially. So it depends, your inflation depends on where you live, your geography, because inflation in upper middle class area will be higher than in a lower middle class area. So even in Mumbai, it depends on which part of Mumbai you live, you will pay higher for services, right? So in Colaba, you will pay higher for services than in, say, Mira Road, or in Marine Drive or in Santa Cruz, you will pay more than in just Kalba Devi or Kalina, as you wish. Right, so remember that your geography decides, your consumption pattern decides. Somebody eating a lot of branded stuff and will obviously pay more than people eating unbranded stuff. Some vegetables are more expensive, some vegetables are less expensive. People who smoke and drink obviously have more expenses than people who don't smoke, don't drink. People who eat meat spend more than people who eat only vegetables, right? So it depends on a lot of factors. So the inflation that I'm talking about for Mr. X and Mr. Y may be very different. Even if they're brothers, they may be very different. One brother may completely change his lifestyle and one brother may be sticking to the older lifestyle. I have found two brothers, hold your breath, spending 1,500 rupees per month on electricity, and other brothers spending 17,000 per month. Yes, you heard it right, 17,000 and 1,500. This is the gap between two brothers, blood brothers. One living in Mumbai spending 1,500, one living in Chennai spending 17,000. There is absolutely no connection. Don't copy from somebody else. Calculate your own. Why is your electricity bill high? Why is your telephone bill high? I'm not commenting whether it should be high or low, but I'm saying calculate the facts, arrive at the inflation number. Then it's a very simple Excel tool. Say you have 1 crore, you're going to get 8%, so that is 8 lakhs. Your expenses are 6 lakhs, that's great. So make it, stretch it to 20-30 years, and then you will realize what I'm saying. Why 25 times may not be enough, why 35 times may not be enough. Depending on how much return you get, how much tax you pay, how intelligently your buckets have been created, and how well you manage it. It's all this, because when you're so tight, even losing 1 rupee to, oh, I gave it to my friend's son who was doing business, kind of, there is absolutely no place. So yes, inflation should be tackled. Inflation is something to be worried about. Older people, retired people, or people completely dependent on interest rates can be sure that in an aggressive country like this, they will want interest rates to be reduced. We should thank Raghuram Rajan for not reducing interest rates for a very long time. But now I don't see any governor being able to handle that, and the government is also reducing interest on your national savings certificates and PPF and all that. Don't be fooled by this gimmick of introducing and pulling it out. Maybe it was a mistake, but this is a mistake which is going to be very quickly corrected. in the next 90 days, next time when there is interest rate change, that will be permanent, it will be no withdrawal. So yes, interest rates will go down. There is a huge vested interest in keeping interest rate down. I think you should read Vivek Kaul's article. I could have repeated all that as to why people like lower interest rates. But interest rates will go low. If you're dependent only on interest, please get into a portfolio with little equity. And yes, you have to worry about inflation. Inflation will be high, interest rates will be low because the government is under pressure to borrow. So therefore the government will hold the interest rate low. It's a conspiracy against older people living just on interest and pension. Be careful, be prepared. So 30 times or 35 times or maybe 40 times your annual expenses is what you should be targeting, not 25 times. Thank you.